Hey, what's going on, guys? There are 8 current fights that are confirmed for UFC 300, and the way it's looking right now on paper, UFC 300 will be the greatest fight card of all time. And since we've had these fight announcements kind of staggered over the last couple weeks, and there's a lot of people questioning the bout order, I wanted to make one video talking about all the UFC 300 fights that are currently confirmed. I'm going to try to go in what I believe will be the bout order, but we don't necessarily know just yet. I'm only really going to differentiate it between prelim and main card because we still potentially have 4 to 6 more fights going to be announced for UFC 300, considering we only have 8 fights right now. Typically, the UFC has 12 to 14 fight cards, so this fight card can only get better. And I think 2 fights that are yet to be announced will be at the top of the card. I do not believe we currently have the main and co-main event. And at the end of this video, I'm going to speculate on what those fights could potentially be. And I'm going to give an early prediction for every single one of these fights as well. Starting off with the first matchup, and I'm going to go in the order that I think these fights will most likely be in as they sit right now, at least these 8. Obviously, there may be some other fights that end up jumping in between some of these matchups. But we're going to start off with Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. I believe 99% sure that this will be on the prelims. It's a wonder whether it'll be on the early prelims or just the regular prelims. I think most likely Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage, I'm going to guess that it opens up the regular prelims, not the early prelims. Not that it really matters all that much, but I think this will be on the ESPN prelims. I'm assuming UFC 300 will have ESPN prelims. But Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage, I think this is the worst fight on the card. This could have been such a better matchup if maybe they did like an Andre Muniz against Bo Nickal. This is an easy win for Bo Nickal. If he loses this fight, it's the end of his career. Cody Brundage is coming off a Batista Bomb victory, so there's that. But Bo Nickal, even though he's only 5-0, he should run through Cody Brundage. And this is really just a showcase for Bo Nickal to kind of promote him in the future. And, you know, honestly, I don't have much to say about this fight. This is the one fight on the card that I don't like. I just wish they would have gave Bo Nickal just a slight step up in competition. And literally Brundage is bottom of the barrel. I wouldn't trust him to win a street fight, to be quite honest. So Bo Nickal definitely wins this matchup. I think he finishes him in the first round. And I think it's an easy win for Bo Nickal. Next up, also on the prelims, this may be on the early prelims, is Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. This was just announced earlier tonight, along with the Justin Gaethje Max Holloway fight. Bobby Green, Jim Miller, I think is awesome matchmaking by the UFC. I have a feeling this might end up on the early prelims. I don't think the UFC is as romantic about Jim Miller as a lot of the fans are. I think this is going to be one of those fights where you have 2 guys in Bobby Green and Jim Miller who've been around forever, who are veterans of the sport, who are kind of going to be like, okay, we'll just toss them on the early prelims. And this is a decent fight, to be honest. I mean, this is like a, mid-tier regular prelim on any other pay-per-view card. I mean, Bobby Green, I know he's coming off a loss against Jalen Turner, but he took that fight on short notice and he got absolutely starched. Then you have Jim Miller, who just looks like an old farmhand going out there and just somehow just turning contenders back, or not even real contenders back, but younger fighters back. It's just crazy to me. I think this is great matchmaking. I think it's a fun fight. It's a fight that I remember was originally scheduled for UFC 172, and I think it's been scheduled multiple times since then. I went to that card live in 2014, I believe it was, and I was disappointed when Bobby Green, Jim Miller got canceled. So I think this is a good fight. Who do I favor in this fight? Honestly, I'm 50-50. But I'm going to say, I think I was leaning Jim Miller earlier. I'm going to say I lean Bobby Green, but I don't, you know what? I lean Jim Miller. Bobby Green's coming off all that damage against Jalen Turner. I'll obviously do a full card prediction when we get closer to U300, but I think this is a solid prelim fight between Bobby Green and Jim Miller. I'm going to go Jim Miller to win at UFC 300 and retire in the cage. Next up, also what I believe will be on the prelim, we have Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt in the bantamweight division. I hate but love this fight. This is a solid matchup, but I just feel like there were better fights to make. I thought they should have made Cody Garbrandt, Dominic Cruz too, and I thought they should have made Deiveson Figueiredo versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I thought it made more sense, but I understand they're hoping to get Cody Garbrandt maybe back in the top 10 of the bantamweight division. He's not even currently in the top 15 unless the rankings have recently changed. This is a fun fight stylistically. I just don't trust Cody Garbrandt's chin. But honestly, I'm still looking forward to this matchup, and the fact that this is a prelim is insanity. Deiveson Figueiredo, former champion. Cody Garbrandt, former champion. And I think it was 7 former headliners of UFC pay-per-views who were on this card. I think that's right. Deiveson Figueiredo has headlined a pay-per-view before. Cody Garbrandt has headlined a pay-per-view before. Aljamain Sterling has headlined a pay-per-view before. Charles Oliveira has headlined a pay-per-view before. Yuri Prochazka has headlined a pay-per-view before. Justin Gaethje has headlined a pay-per-view before, and Max Holloway has headlined a pay-per-view before. So that just goes to show you how unbelievably stacked UFC 300 is already, and we don't have all the fights, and that's exactly why I made a video last week saying, pump the brakes. Everyone's saying UFC 300 sucks. Pump the brakes. It's an amazing fight card already on paper, and we still don't even have all the fight announcements now. They added a couple fights since then, but people last week had these unrealistic expectations for 300, and even right now, as it stands, it's one of the best pay-per-views of all time, even if they didn't have 4 to 6 more fights to add on this card, which is insanity. But anyway, back to the fight. Deiveson Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt. Could have been better matchups, but still like the fight. I'm going Deiveson Figueiredo to get it done in this matchup. But I do think it's a fun fight because Cody Garbrandt can get right back in the mix in the bantamweight division, which is something I never thought we'd see. I mean, 2 fights ago, he's damn near getting KO'd in the 3rd round against, Trevin Jones, which is insanity. But overall, Cody Garbrandt's kind of gotten his confidence back, beat Brian Kelleher by brutal knockout in his last fight, getting a big step up against Figgy. I love this. I don't love this matchup, but I do love this fight. If Cody Garbrandt shows up like 75% of what he once was. Again, overall, I wish there was, different matchmaking here. It could have been better, but I don't want to complain too much. I still think this is a really solid fight. And I believe that will be on the prelims as well. Moving up on the card, we have Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. I mean, that's crazy. Calvin Kattar returning against Aljamain Sterling, coming off his loss against Sean O'Malley. Aljamain Sterling literally headlined a pay-per-view in his last fight, lost his belt there. This is a weird matchup at 45. Again, there's a lot of weird matchups on 300, but just in terms of skill level and name value, this card is unbelievable, and we haven't even got to the best fights just yet. It's crazy that Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling is going to be on the prelims. I said this in previous videos weeks ago, and people are like, Joey, how could you disrespect Aljamain Sterling? Yeah, this is going to be on the prelims. Now, I don't absolutely love this matchup. I think there could have been some more fun matchups, but again, we're splitting hairs here. I still think this is an interesting matchup. If Aljamain Sterling wants to get in the mix at 145 pounds, which I don't necessarily think he can, I think Calvin Kattar's a good matchup. I mean, Calvin Kattar returning from an injury, a long layoff, and if Aljamain Sterling wants to jump into that top 10, I think Calvin Kattar's the matchup for him. So I'm picking Calvin Kattar in this matchup. We've never really seen him just out-wrestled and out-grinded on the ground, and I don't think Aljo has the size to be able to do that to someone like Calvin Kattar. I do worry about him coming back off the injury, but I think Calvin Kattar gets it done. But again, another solid fight with 2 elite-level fighters. Moving up on the card, another prelim. And this is crazy that I'm even saying that this fight is a prelim. And obviously, there can be fight cancellations, and maybe some of these fights end up being on the main card. And it's just insane to me that this fight probably won't be on the main card. And that is Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic. I believe this will headline the prelims. That is insanity. The fact that Jiri Prochazka goes from headlining Madison Square Garden to headlining the prelims of UFC 300. Jiri Prochazka is one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. He lost against Alex Pereira. He was finding some success before he got finished. Aleksandar Rakic coming back off a long layoff and an injury. In this fight, I mean, Rakic goes out there and beats a former champion, Jiri Prochazka. He jumps right up to potential #1 contender in the light heavyweight division. Love this matchup. I think it's a very compelling fight. I think it's a tough fight for both guys. And I absolutely love watching Jiri Prochazka fight. So this is a banger fight for the light heavyweight division. Whoever wins this fight is an immediate title contention. I know we kind of have to figure out what's going on right now with the light heavyweight division because you have Alex Pereira as the champion. You have Jamal Hill waiting in the wings, potentially rematching his brother. Then you have Magomed Ankalaev potentially waiting in the wings as well. So we kind of have to figure out what's going on with the division. But whoever wins out of Jiri Prochazka and Aleksandar Rakic is in the title picture at light heavyweight. And that's what's so crazy about this card. I mean, That has title implications. Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling has slight title implications, especially if Volkanovski beats Topuria. We need some fresh contenders. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt has slight bantamweight title implications. Honestly, if Cody Garbrandt chins Figgy and Sean O'Malley beats Marlon Chito Vera, I see Sean O'Malley trying to duck everyone else and call out Cody Garbrandt. And the UFC might go for that as well. So a lot of these fights have title implication, which is insane. But Jiri Prochazka, Aleksandar Rakic is an amazing fight. But unfortunately, for an early prediction, I have to go Aleksandar Rakic. He's so big for the weight class, has excellent kickboxing, super defensively responsible, and very well-rounded as well, has grappling in his back pocket. So I'm going to go Aleksandar Rakic in that fight. I don't know about methods, in a lot of these matchups just yet. I haven't watched fight footage and watched tape and kind of made detailed predictions. But right now, I'm feeling like Aleksandar Rakic gets it done. I do worry about him coming back off an injury, but I think he beats Jiri Prochazka. Jiri Prochazka is just so wild. That style he has is not conducive for longevity in the UFC. But it's crazy that that's potentially headlining the prelims. Now let's get to the actual main card, because this main card is going to be straight up insanity. Opening up the main card, as long as they do a 5-fight main card, they might do a 6-fight main card. And in that case, Jiri Prochazka, Aleksandar Rakic would be on the pay-per-view. There is a chance of that. They've done that before in the past, so maybe that happens. But if they do a traditional 5-fight main card, I believe opening up the main card will be Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. That is a crazy fight. I know people have said, and last week people were saying this too, UFC 299 is better than UFC 300. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, 1-for-1, is better than any fight on UFC 299, including the main event, which is Sean O'Malley, Marlon Chito Vera. This is a banger fight. Charles Oliveira, a former champion, coming off the utter destruction of Beneil Dariush. Arman Tsarukyan making his way up the ranks as well, coming off an utter destruction of Beneil Dariush as well. And they both have an argument right now for a title shot. They're not getting it. They're fighting each other in a #1 contender fight in the lightweight division. And what an incredible matchup. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. I mean, Charles Oliveira, one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. Again, I mean, you probably have, overall in this card, 3 of the top 5 most exciting fighters on the UFC roster, period. That is crazy to me. So I absolutely love that matchup. It's for a #1 contender spot. The winner of this fight should fight for a title next, even if they have to wait a little bit. But, I mean, I absolutely love that matchup. It's a tough fight to pick. My early kind of lean is Arman Tsarukyan. I just think he's so well-rounded. I think he has the jiu-jitsu to go to the ground with Charles Oliveira. I think he's defensively responsible enough on the feet to avoid the big shots of Charles Oliveira. But honestly, a lot of these matchups are really tough to pick. I mean, I really think this fight could go either way, but I cannot wait for this fight. And the fact that this is opening up the main card potentially is straight up insanity. I absolutely love this matchup. It's better than anything on UFC 299. Moving up on the card. Again, we're on the main card here. I think this is going to be the 4th fight on the main card. And that is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. 5 rounds for the BMF title. Now, I made a reaction video to this earlier today. And I talked about how I hated this fight. I don't like this matchup on paper. I don't like the fact it's for a gimmick BMF title fight. But what people don't understand, and I don't know if they're casual fans, I don't know if they don't have the ability to look past the names, Justin Gaethje, one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. Justin Gaethje, the elite of the elite. Max Holloway, one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. Not in the same realm as Justin Gaethje, but also Max Holloway, one of the elite of the elite. Well then, Joey, why don't you love this matchup? Weight classes exist for a reason. And I just think Max Holloway is biting off more than he can chew moving up to 155. And it's a half-ass move up. I know people are like, oh, well, he's got 3 months. If Max Holloway is going to move up to 55, he needs like a year. He needs to build up his body mass to move up to 55 because he's going to be undersized. If you take 2 guys that are the same skill level and one of them is a little bit bigger, the person who's a little bit bigger is going to have the advantage. And I just think Justin Gaethje is a horrible stylistic matchup for Max Holloway. And I'm scared he's going to turn him into the next Tony Ferguson. I really do. I really do. And I love Max Holloway. I love Justin Gaethje as well. Justin Gaethje's coming off a brutal KO victory over Dustin Poirier. Max Holloway is coming off a win over the dead body of the Korean Zombie. And in that fight, Korean Zombie rushed forward and landed some shots on Max Holloway's chin. Max Holloway got the break speed off him by Alexander Volkanovski in the trilogy. And I know you can say Max Holloway's improved since then, but there is a massive difference between Arnold Allen and the dead corpse of TKZ on the way out and Justin Gaethje in the prime of his career getting better with every single fight up a weight class when you're not even putting on size. It's not like Holloway can go out and grapple against Justin Gaethje. So I don't love this fight, but I do admit, and I don't think people understood this in my video, I do admit, on paper, it looks fun. I mean, it's striker versus striker. It's fan-friendly fighter versus fan-friendly fighter. But it's just, I don't like them against each other. I really don't like them against each other. But think about this. Even though I've complained about this fight, this is most likely the 4th fight down. So we have 3 fights after this. Worst case scenario, this would be the featured fight on the main card, in my opinion. That is straight up insanity. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, even though I don't like it, could potentially headline a pay-per-view for the UFC in a pinch. I hate the BMF title. I think it's gimmicky. I think it's corny. Dana White said that's not what we do here. Then he's announcing WWE belts. I don't love it at all. I don't love the matchup, but stylistically, I understand why people look at Max Holloway. They look at Justin Gaethje. They see all action fighters. They see standing fighters who primarily like to strike. And I understand the excitement. Again, I don't like the matchup. But the fact that there may be 3 fights after this on the main card is straight up lunacy. I cannot believe that. And at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I count out Max Holloway. I counted out Dricus du Plessis against Robert Whittaker. Look what happened there. Now, I don't think that's an excuse for bad matchmaking, but at the end of the day, anything can happen in the sport. I just don't think Max Holloway has a path to victory against Justin Gaethje. But again, this is going to be the featured fight, maybe the 4th fight down. That's insanity. Moving up on the card, and this is one that I believe will be the featured fight on the card, and that is Wayy Jang versus Yan Xiaonan. I know people have crapped on this, and oh, we don't care about this, Dana. This is a banger of a women's strawweight title fight. I love this fight. I have no problem. I think this is the best women's MMA fight you can put on right now. Both are action fighters. Both are exciting fighters. I mean, Wayy Jang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk is one of the best fights, period, I've ever seen. Don't even put the word women's fight in there. Don't even put those words in there. It's one of the best fights I've ever seen, period, and it included Wayy Jang. So I have no problem if this is the featured fight on the card. I think it should be above Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. Maybe that's a hot take, but I believe an undisputed title should be held in higher regard than a fake WWE BMF title. At this point, let's have a Money in the Bank. Let's have a ladder match. Let's make Gaethje versus Holloway a ladder match. Wayy Jang, Yan Xiaonan's a banger of a women's strawweight title fight. And I think it's the only women's fight that they could put on UFC 300. So that's just the 8 fights that are confirmed right now. I mean, think about how crazy that is. That is a pay-per-view card in itself. Regardless of what you want to say is the headline. I don't care what you want to make the headliner. You know, make whatever fight suits your preferences the headliner of this card as it currently exists. Which I don't believe any of these fights are the co-main or the main event. I don't think any of these are the main event. Dana White would have explicitly said. Now, could he eventually, maybe some deals that he thinks are going to work out, not work out, and could one of these fights end up being a co-main? Yes, it could happen. But I have a feeling that Dana White is planning on putting on 4 title fights. They're going to say, we've never done this before, and technically, it'll be 3 UFC title fights, and then the BMF title fight, which is a WWE gimmick fight. But nonetheless, I think Dana White wants to say that. So think about that. People last week were saying, this fight card sucks. It's one of the greatest fight cards of all time, just with 8 fights announced so far. And I believe the 2 biggest fights on the card aren't announced yet. And one of these fights have been rumored for a while, but I do believe the co-main event of UFC 300 will be Leon Edwards versus Balam Muhammed 2 for the welterweight title. And I know people crap on this fight. Like, oh, Leon Edwards and Balam Muhammed, nobody cares about them. They don't have any personalities. Both of these guys are on unbelievable long winning streaks. Both of these guys are the elite of the elite in the welterweight division. And for whatever reason, people want to say, oh, Leon's boring, Bilal's boring. They're not Justin Gaethje. They're not Yuri Prochazka. Neither one of them is. But if you care about the sport and the meritocracy of the sport at all, this is 2 of the best who right now, It makes perfect sense for them to fight each other, and it's an interesting stylistic matchup. Leon Edwards, historically, I know he's worked on it and improved on it and looked amazing against Colby Covington. He's had issues with grapplers. Also, his cardio has shown to be an issue in the past. Balam Muhammed has gotten better with every fight. Balam Muhammed has very good grappling, and Balam Muhammed will press forward and use his stamina as a weapon in a fight. And Leon Edwards, every single fight out, he's getting better and better and better. He's taking down Colby Covington with easy double leg takedown. He's controlling Colby on the ground for a bit. So Leon Edwards, Balam Muhammed is a spectacular matchup. I don't care what anyone says. I wouldn't even have a problem if this was the main event, even though I know the casuals of the MMA community would cry about it. But that is what I think will be the co-main event, and I think that's a phenomenal fight, especially when you have an amazingly stacked card underneath of it. But that begs the question, what will be the main event? And I think it really comes down to two options. I do think it comes down to two options, and I think one part of the equation is Alex Pereira and his light heavyweight title. I believe the main event will be Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Now, I think this fight just makes perfect sense. If Jamahal Hill's injured or he's dealing with legal trouble or maybe he wants to rematch his brother, he can do that on 301. I think this is the only other fight to make in the light heavyweight division right now. And Magomed Ankalaev's coming off a statement knockout win against Johnny Walker. So, and he said, I will turn around, I will fight at UFC 300. So if the UFC has been kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do with Alex Pereira has been hitting a comeback. Maybe they're working on this behind the scenes. I think Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev could headline UFC 300. If it's not that, if Jamahal Hill is ready to go, if he's healthy, he deserves a shot. He's a champion that's never lost his belt. So there, it would be Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill for the light heavyweight title. Either way, Alex Pereira defending against either one of those, combined with the card that I've already gone through, is just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, that would be insanity. And the other kind of wild card matchup, which isn't even that wild because we're a couple days from UFC 297, there is a chance Dana White's been waiting for the result of the main event of UFC 297. The main event of UFC 300 could very well be, it could be Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya 2 for the middleweight title. It could be, and I think this is more likely if Dricus wins, it could be Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title. I mean, and also another wild card, I know I'm going through a million fights, I believe it will be the light heavyweight fight. It could be Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya at light heavyweight for the title. I believe those are more of long shots. I think the UFC is looking to book Alex Pereira as the headliner for UFC 300. And ultimately, if Jamahal Hill is injured, I think it'll be Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev for the light heavyweight title. So you'll have 4 title fights on UFC 300, even though technically it's only 3 because the BMF title is a made-up WWE gimmick belt. And then you have all those other fights. Yuri Prochazka, Aleksandar Rakic on the prelims. Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling on the prelims. That's crazy. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt on the prelims. That's crazy. I think UFC 300, regardless of what the next 2 fights are, which I believe they will be main card fights, I believe they will be bigger fights than what are currently on the card. UFC 300, as it sits right now, is shaping up to be one of the greatest fight cards of all time, and I absolutely cannot wait for April 13th. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.